So now I know why you put Haint Blue out for us.
Now you know why what?
You put Haint Blue out for us.
Haint Blue.
Because we're going to learn about blue today.
Oh, that blue. Yeah, that's right. It was a preliminary, right? I was setting you up.
Yeah.
Actually,
and I couldn't figure out why, but that's why.
I didn't do that consciously. It just worked out that way.
Well, your unconscious was very good.
That was a month ago when I sent out the Haint Blue.
Yeah, what you must have known.
But I wasn't planning that far ahead. Let's go week to week. The time we got here, we got a couple minutes. See who else comes today.
How have you been?
Good. Yeah, just enjoying this weather.
I love it.
My energy comes back. I feel like 20 years drops off my life in terms of how I feel. It's like I'm a young man again with this weather. And as months I start am I dragging around because I'm getting older? Is it heat? I start to not be sure, you know, but it is really the heat, humidity.
Well, I'm going to physical therapy twice a week to try to get my legs strengthened and my confidence that I can walk better strengthened. So that's good too.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Great. Good. Hey, Jim, are you there? No.
I'm here, Joe.
Okay, just checking. We're still meeting right after this to go over your part.
That's what I said. Yep.
Okay, I didn't hear you. Sorry. But it won't take long because you don't have many lines.
I know. I was crushed that I didn't get more lines. I'm just kidding, Joe.
Well, and the other perfect match, Tajun Baba, was jealous. He's not in the play.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. I did read the Lord Mayhair part about
good.
About him, and I found out he was a pretty nice guy, you know, so I'm trying to do it kind of as a nice guy.
Oh, yeah, he was a nice guy. Yeah.
Everybody maybe you could have a star appearance.
Did you ever spend any long period of time in a psychiatric ward in your life?
Are you talking about me? No.
Oh, Sue, we're talking about my play that I'm doing.
I want a part.
It's too late. You're about 6 weeks too
Well,
late.
I love to be in plays, especially if they're virtual and I can just use my voice. Yeah. I am horrible on a stage.
Okay, well, it's a reading of a play I wrote.
Yeah. Think of me next time, Joe.
All right, that could be mine.
If you need some sort of a voice like mine.
All right. If there is a next time, we'll see. What time we got here? 1:59, well, 2 o'clock. All right, maybe a low turnout today. Am I missing somebody? Here, let me go see. Maybe not. Sue, yeah, it's like we've got, oh, it says 10 participants. Where are they? I don't see them. I don't see anybody. Maryland, Japan. Who are they? Let me see. Do it this way. Maryland, Samsung, Sue, Charles here, Fresh Day, I guess. Jim, okay. Right, let me get that. How do you get out of that once you do it? This? No, I want to leave the meeting. Participants, there, okay. All right, let's start. It's 2 o'clock. I'm always very punctual. So today I'm going to cover 2 more women artists. And so you women can't accuse me of perpetuating the male dominant art establishment. You know, I've been. And the 2 women artists are Joan Mitchell, not to be confused with Joni Mitchell, the singer, but actually Joni Mitchell, if you want, is a very good painter besides singer, and just go to Google Images and type in Joni Mitchell paintings and you'll see her paintings. She's done paintings for some of her album covers. But this is a different person. This is Joan Mitchell, who's an abstract expressionist. And she's one of my favorite 20th century painters. I love Joan Mitchell. I love her style. She's an abstract expressionist. So. And then the second artist is lived late 1700s until she died in 1842, and that's Elizabeth Vigee Le Brun. Anyone ever hear of her? No. Earlier on in this, when we started doing this, I had I showed a one part of a 3-part series of Women in the Arts. And if you watch part two, I think it was, she covers Elizabeth Vigee Le Brun, who's a very, like one of the top European portrait painters, and was the official painter for Marie Antoinette until Marie got her head chopped off, and then Elizabeth had to get out of town. But so we'll cover her, and then the BBC History of 3 Colors. I'm going to do with History of Blue by that same host, the young guy, and I keep forgetting his name, who we watched when he did Andy Warhol and the others. He hosts this one. So the 3 colors that he did are, and they're each an hour long. History of Blue, which we'll watch today, History of White, and the History of Gold. It's just a really fascinating take on art history, rather than looking at painters or paintings, just looking at a color and follow its history and how it was used, where it came from. And I'll just show this one. If you want to see the other 2, they're on YouTube. You can watch the History of Gold and the History of White. Okay, so just so you know. All right, so let's start with Joan Mitchell. Joan was born in 1925 and died in 1992. So what, 84 year, 80 something, 25. Anyway, she was old, but 800 paintings or something, huge number of paintings, large canvases. The last half of her life or so, she lived in France, and even though she was American, she just chose to leave the country and go. She loved living in France, in the French countryside. Very talented woman. She was an ice skating superstar in her youth, and was winning championships, and a writer, a poet. Everything she did was, she was very achieved some kind of notoriety in the field. And then she started studying painting early on in life, and just moved to New York City, got in with the abstract expressionists in the 50s, and started getting known. And then she just left the country and stayed in France, but still her fame spread. So let's look at some of her works. Let's see here, share screen, share computer sound, right? Share. All right. And then let's see. Where is it? Come on. I'm getting there. Oh, here it is. Here she is. All right, can you see that screen? Yes? I see people shaking their head. So I can't hear you because everyone's mic is up. Yeah,
Can hear it. See it.
Okay. All right, so this is her own. She has a foundation, and they sponsor artist programs and etc. And so this has just about all her paintings. So we'll skim through it, give you some idea. I'm going to start later on in life, and actually the ones we're looking at are. So she started off doing these kind of paintings. They're in the 40s. Nothing that unusual, but colorful, simple, simple, childlike. So she was doing this work in the 40s, and then where's the? Oh, gotta go back. Okay. 41. There's a big change at some point. She got into doing these more geometric forms, like George O'Keeffe. Those that American style. I can't think of the name of the style, but she was doing that for a while. And then you could tell. Then in 1950, she started changing her style, maybe being influenced by abstract expressionists. And then a little bit of Picasso here. You can see she's trying out different styles. She hasn't quite discovered her own yet. That's what's happening. It's often the case. And then now we're into the 50s. And this is where she really started. She did this very free, loose style of colors. And this became her, what she was known for. And she stayed with this style through most of her life. Go 1, 2. So a lot of white space, and she's still in, actually what I think she would have in mind is she's doing landscapes, but what she's doing oftentimes is just capturing the essence of a landscape, the essence. She's not literally painting trees or bushes or whatever. She's taking it to the next level of abstraction and just getting down. It's like you're squinting, like if you look at a landscape and just squint as much as you know, so you can barely see it. Just, but she's capturing the feel of a landscape, and so that we're not looking at the specific objects, trees or bushes or whatever. And she wants to she wants to give us the feel of it and the play of colors. There's always a lot of movement in her abstractions, and oftentimes, at least most of the time, you'll see there's a lot of white space that gives us the painting a chance to breathe. So it's not the canvas. There's always a place of center of interest where there's the colors and are bunched together or grouped together tightly, and then they often will just loosen up as it goes out. You know. And everyone's mic is muted. You can unmute your mics and make comments.
I'm unmuted.
Good. All right. So any comments, welcome. I'll open this one. Just tell me what you see, what you think.
I don't know. It just feels like way too many, way too much on one piece of paper, surface.
All right. Doesn't appeal to you?
It does not appeal to my heart.
Right.
No. And in particular, the black that's smeared. I think it's a statement of some kind.
Uh-huh.
So it, rather than expansive, it's contracting.
All right.
So I wouldn't, let's put it this way, I wouldn't put that on my wall.
All right. Anyone else? That's fine.
Joe, what is the name of this one, for example?
Yeah, cafe. I don't know why she called it cafe. So, okay. I'll keep my opinions out of or observations. Just keep going.
Could you share your observation though?
On that one?
Yeah.
I lost it now. This one, here it is. I like the movement of it. I like the flow. And I really respect what she's doing. I think it works as a harmonious whole. And I like the fact that there's contrast. I like the darkness. It kind of like centers, it's like a spinning life force in a way, with the dark black holes in the middle. Kind of, I could free associate it like galaxies around a black galaxy, like around a black hole, or two black holes. Oftentimes in landscapes, you see that there'll be like a dark center area. But
for some reason,
I like it. I mean, I would live with this. I love it actually. I like the freedom, the flow of it, the movement. I like her choice of colors. There's you get the warm colors on the outside and you get the cool colors on the inside. She's balancing that. Yeah, what are you going to say, Jim?
I like it.
Who said that?
Marilyn.
All right, say why. Any reasons why?
I was going to say, I like the movement, and there is something just really beautiful and flowing. I like the energy, I guess.
Yeah.
energy, and I'm not looking into it as deeply as you, but I love it.
I like the white space. There's white spaces throughout. She doesn't. That's one of her hallmarks of keeping white space in her eyes. But it lets the painting breathe, even though she's got lots of activity and colors and busyness happening. There's also, she's balancing out with a sense of space and breathing on the white on the outside, and but the white penetrates right in through. And so I mean, I could free associate it. It's an abstract landscape. It could be black holes in space. You know, could be a lot of different things. Let's keep going.
Let me just ask you, Joe.
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, Jim.
If you were naming that space, it'd have something to do with maybe astronomy, but she called it cafe.
Cafe. Yeah, I don't know why she thought.
Yeah, what is it?
Maybe she drank too much coffee that day, and I don't know. I have no idea why the cafe. Why, you know, the names for abstract paintings are just, maybe it's hard to name an abstract painting, and she just maybe saw the word cafe on a piece of paper and say that's the name of it, you know.
Maybe she was painting the energies of all the diverse people in a cafe.
That could be. That could be. That's a possibility. Let's look at this one. Here's she's using a monochrome, and this one, greens. Just green.
I love greens.
And that's just a lot of open space, a lot of, well, everything's in flight.
Yeah.
Well, anyone else comments? That's not just me.
It almost looks like birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, some birds. Very nice. But I don't have, you know, like.
And there's a center here, like a weight here where there's most of the, it's like, and like they're coming out of this, almost like butterflies coming out of a cocoon. It could be like an abstract that, you know, but it's on green, or leaves out of a pod, you know. A little bit of red, you know, for complementary, green and red are complementary. She just puts a little dab of red here and there. But yeah, I mean, it's like definitely like a movement. The thing about a traditional landscape, it freezes the, you know, it's hard to capture movement. Van Gogh was pretty good at it to an extent, but she took it to the next extent. Nature has a lot of movement, the wind, the sea, you know, butterflies. If you just do a painting of what you see, you've eliminated the movement. It's kind of a frozen image. You can maybe loosen up with your painting, but she took it to the next step. She's like getting down to the, there's like a flow of energy in nature, and that it's objects flow, colors flow, there's movement, there's patterns that come together then shift apart like clouds in a way. So I think for me anyway, she's getting at that. You know, she's by abstracting and taking, not painting recognizable objects per se. Yeah. And to me, there's a great, in her paintings like this, there's a great joy and reveling in the beauty of nature. You know, it's like a vivaciousness. It's like, any other comment?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Let's move on. I'm just skipping years here, but to give you a sense where she went. Yeah. So we're in 59. You see her style start to change some.
Wow.
Try this. You might think, oh, I could do this. Or you might think, my 5-year-old can do this. Believe me, it's not easy. I've tried it. It is not easy. It looks easy. That's the mastery of it. Oh, she's doing just slopping paint around. And that's it. It is not easy to make it work and to keep a sense of color consistency. I think, just from my own personal experience, doing a good abstract painting is more difficult than doing a realistic painting, because you have to rely on your imagination totally. You don't have anything out there to ground you that you're copying or modifying. It is more difficult to make one work. And often people say, oh, my 3-year-old can do this. Well, try it. Try it. That's what I'm saying. Try to do something that really, and that's really works. Pardon?
Marble painting. I used to paint with the kids, put the
Right. Yeah.
paint in a little basin and then put marbles, and then they would just like, you know, rock the basin back and forth and see what they get.
Cool. Yeah. But there is a childlike quality. She's tapped into her inner 5-year-old, but she's gone to art school and has painted. And this was after years of painting more realistically, like we saw some of those earlier ones. It's not like she couldn't do it. Yeah, now she did series of these where there is a central area. Any comments on that? That's wall color.
That's interesting.
All right. Why?
Combination of colors.
What? Try to be more specific. What colors are you seeing? What's the combination?
I like it. She used that before, the greens and the blues. And actually, Mayra loved the color, the green.
What is it about the composition and the shapes? What is it? Look at. Okay, you got those colors, but what do you see?
Well, it's more cohesive to me.
All right.
And I like the layers. You can see the colors popping through, the depth of it.
The composition is simpler. There's 3 patterns. There's 3 rectangles, 2 little ones at the bottom, and then 1 big one there.
Yeah.
That dominates the canvas.
And I like the way it's sitting on its background too. It's kind of
right.
Yeah.
So here, there's a background foreground, and the other paintings there was no background foreground. It was all one. Here, so it's like this could be a landscape. It could be a big bush, greenery, trees, water. I mean, the blue could refer to water. That's one possibility that opens up. But it doesn't, to appreciate it, it doesn't, what I just said, you don't have to do that. You don't have to say, well, what is this in the real world that it could be an abstraction of? It just, it is in its own right. It's its own world within the boundaries of the canvas. It has it's just its own world. It doesn't have to refer to anything in the objective world out there.
right.
Yeah. So there's, I think my eye gets drawn to that blue. And it really has a beauty to it on the bottom left. It forms another, actually I said 3, there's actually 4 rectangles. 1, 2, this rectangle formed by the blue, and then the blue is part of a large one. And you can even say this one is a rectangle. So there's more that emerged, that it's actually a play of rectangles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 even. Okay, and this could be even a sub-rectangle. But the color, I suppose these are all muted grade greens, and so the 2 vivid colors are the blue and the violet.
I see the violet as a bird from
Okay.
her other ones also.
Yeah.
I think
Go
it's
ahead,
floating away.
Okay. It has a quality of evening. These are like evening shades, the blues, the dark green. So, yeah, it's an evening within a daytime setting. It's kind of, you can look at it that way. Okay.
Samadhi.
What you say?
Walking the path to the Samadhi.
Walking. Oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe that's really the Samadhi.
Maybe. So see, I can enlarge the image. All right. Yeah. Any comments?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, now there's something about a very simple palette, one color and variations on that color, and keeping keeping it to that has a more softer reflective effect on the viewer. If there's a
Yeah.
lot of different colors like the earlier ones, it's busier and keeps you more on the surface, like you're in a city and getting hit by lots of different impressions. Whereas something like this has more of a, you're out in the countryside or just a more inward, right?
Yeah.
Feel
Yeah,
to it. It pulls you
definitely has
inward. And I think that's true of any
depth and
abstract. I noticed
texture.
like Mark Rothko, simple colors that pull you inward. When you have a lot of colors going on in an abstract painting, it keeps you more on the surface. So,
Yeah, this has depth and texture. I mean,
yeah.
look at the shading in the right side of the green. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the cascading drippings of,
Right.
whatever. It's gorgeous.
I
And
was going
look
to
at all
ask
the,
if,
oh, go ahead.
sorry,
Sorry.
I was going to ask if she and Rothko knew each other.
No, they must have. They were in New York at the same time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it has that same,
Yeah. Right. There is
let's look
some
into the
similarity.
color and just
Yeah.
feel it color.
And look at all the white space. Look at all the
Yeah.
blank canvas, more or less, and that has a very restful effect. I
But
think.
there's the other bird figure too,
There is.
that I see.
Okay, right. You've seen birds today. Good.
Yeah, the little white bird.
Let's see.
I got bird on my mind.
What year are we? 67. I'm going to go backwards. Because there's some trippage 3 paintings. Yeah. Woods Country, 1968. Any comments?
Don't like it.
You what?
I said I don't like it.
Okay.
I could take the lower half though,
Right.
a little less.
Yeah. So less busy. This part doesn't appeal to you.
No.
No. Okay.
And I'll take the upper half.
Yeah, all this has a lot of white space and less so here. There's some white space. How does it feel if the eye, the eye goes through, gets drawn this way? See that it's like a path through the little white space. And this could be like overhanging vines if you want to make a reference to the outer world, like you're walking through the woods. That's what she says. Wait a minute, that's the name of it. Go back to that before I enlarged it. Where'd it go? Woods Country. Yeah. So I think she's capturing what she's trying to do here. What she did is the feel of walking through the woods in the country. And sometimes it's very busy, the vines and the growth and the trees, and sometimes there's the open space. It's both. I like that one actually. I like it a lot. I'm looking for certain ones. Let me see if I can find them. 27. No, not here, not here, not here. Maybe they're later. Okay, so she went to a period there in the 70s where she's just doing more geometric shapes. Maybe she just got tired of what she's done. I'm not real crazy about these. But then she started doing these more. Yeah. Weeds, this one's called.
These for puppies. Ooh.
So 2 canvases together. A lot of movement of the yellow. She's using complementary colors, blue and gold, orange. Blue and orange are complementary colors. So there's like a movement of, could be flowers. She says it's weeds, a certain kind of weed that just cuts through the center of both paintings. And then there's suggestion of background trees or a path that goes through here.
I like that.
This one,
No, yeah,
entitled.
like the, oh, ooh, so beautiful. I love those colors.
Simple one, primarily one color, violet, violet blues, and black
That's nice.
with a little, with some tan, white tan in the background. And it's actually blue orange. This is a very tinted out orange and the blue. So she's using complementary colors, except for the black.
And I like
Again, using one color has a more restful, reflective effect on the viewer, I think.
and I like the little bit of dark in the bottom there. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're looking at
Right. And it's balanced by this bar,
mountains or
the
something.
line of thick dark here. I want to show some video clips in a second of her. Another, I like that one a lot. One more and I'll show you the video. I think we looked at that. Oh yeah, she's just going into her line.
Later.
Yeah, 70s. She's experimenting with lines. Okay. Again, I think this whole feel of explosive, what's the name of it? Untitled. This explosive summer energy or spring energy, the essence of it, of life bursting forth, you know, and
Reminds me of fall more than anything.
could be, yeah. Well, okay. Could
That
be fall colors.
brilliant
Look at that.
fall, autumn,
Yeah.
when the sun shines on the yellow flowers.
All right. It could be summer or fall, you know, it could be sunflowers in the summer, it could be fall colors as the trees turning. But this effusive explosion of color that you see in nature in certain times. But she's not worried about the specific shape. She's just capturing the feel of it and the energy, underlying energy of it. I want to pop up a video. Let's see. Let me go out of this one. Or maybe I should.
Did she often divide her paintings with lines or, make them not the same painting?
Well, those are different canvases.
Oh, okay.
They're either 2 or 3 canvases. Yeah.
I thought they were all one.
No, there are 3 different canvases. Yeah. All right. How do I get this out of here now? Hold on. Here we go. Come on, open up. Here we go. Aha.
Joan Mitchell was such a strong painter from the very beginning. This period of Mitchell's work in the early 60s, she is exploring and navigating a whole different method and range of paint application, from throwing paint on the canvas to squeezing paint directly onto the canvas. A lot of these paintings seem to revolve around a conflict between 2 primary areas of activity, and you certainly see that in Noel.
Joan Mitchell painted Noel in Paris at a very emotional time. She had just learned that her mother was diagnosed with cancer. She was in a very intense personal relationship. And in many ways, a lot of the feelings and angst she was going through were played out in many of the canvases that she did at this time.
There is a vigor and an expressiveness in the way that this painting and other paintings from this period are created that does give them, you know, their storms. I think that Noel really does sparkle with the chromatic contrast between this sort of hot, bright, orangey red and the whole range of greens. And that certainly characterizes this painting, that idea of the conflict.
In the 1980s, Joan Mitchell was represented by Xavier Fourcade Gallery, one of the top galleries in New York, and they specialized in abstract painting. In 1985, they had a major exhibition of Joan Mitchell paintings from the 1960s, and Noel was featured in that exhibition.
This group of paintings, they had never been seen in New York before. They'd been exhibited only once previously. They were put in storage and remained out of sight for the following 20 years. It just becomes this remarkable time capsule. And the show was very well received, and several of the paintings were sold. There were only 3 of them left out of the group. Joan was never not aware of the reality that her gender, her identity as a woman, put her in a category that she bridled against, that she worked to not allow to limit her. She might stand in front of a painting, nudge a companion and say, "Not bad for a lady painter." She pointed these arrows at herself in order to make it very clear that no one else had any right to say these things about her. I feel strongly that one of the reasons that Joan Mitchell's work is increasingly recognized, increasingly held in high regard, is because her goal for her paintings was that a painting should be a repository that reflects some aspect of lived experience. So that, like a great poem or a Shakespeare sonnet or a great piece of musical composition, you know, the greatest of them are never dated. They're alive in front of our eyes.
One more.
There's no doubt abstract expressionism was dominated by men, but women played a central role in abstract expressionism, and the contributions of Lee Krasner and Helen Frankenthaler have been very underrated until recently. But perhaps the most important of all women abstract expressionists is Joan Mitchell, which is one of the reasons why we choose to end the exhibition in the very last room with the largest single work by any artist in the show, Salute Tom by Joan Mitchell, a 4-part canvas by an artist who spent her time divided over her career between America and France, and the nod to Monet's Nymphéas, the great water lilies that Monet produced in the latter part of his career, seems clear in this work, which also is a pure abstract rumination on light and shade and colour and energy, but ultimately this amazing sense of luminosity. Even when the lights are turned off in this room, it almost seems to shine.
All right. Any comments on that last painting?
Beautiful.
Yeah. Let's just do, I got 3 here. We'll do one more. They're short. It's very short, I think it is.
Joan Mitchell was born in Chicago and attended the School of the Art Institute in the late 1940s, just as the abstract expressionist movement gained popularity. Kate Neeson, Associate Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art.
At the center, we have this tangle of pigmentation of pinks and reds and oranges and yellows. Buried a little bit deeper, you see a number of blue tones, different kinds of slash marks and dripping paints. And above and below this central tangle, we have these pearlescent patches of gray and beiges and purples and pinks that seem to kind of wrap around the tangle. One of the things I love about this painting is its ambiguity. You can approach it from a number of views. The first time I encountered this painting, I was inclined to see that tangle of pigments as a distant horizon line, like you're seeing a bright, vivid, electrified city kind of hovering in the distance. But you could also imagine this as an aerial view on an island like Manhattan, and that gray is the watery environment in which that island sits. Imagine it as a much more zoomed in, close-up, fragmented view of a city at evening through a window that's wet with rain, so that tangle becomes the dripping of lights of cars driving and buildings that are lit at night. It looks like these drips and slashes of brushstrokes were made quickly, and the representation of speed and energy here is really important. But Mitchell herself tended to work deliberately.
Mitchell said,
"Sometimes I don't know exactly what I want with a painting. I check it out, recheck it for days or weeks. Sometimes there is more to do on it. Sometimes I am afraid of ruining what I have. Sometimes I am lazy, I don't finish it or I don't push it far enough. Sometimes I think it's a painting."
All right, so certainly a key figure Joan was in the abstract expressionist movement, and I think she was for me, I think she was one of the best. And her sense of color and the energy and the flow and her aesthetic sense, her sense of color to me is just magnificent, and how she gets the and how she, to me, she just gets down to the essence of life energy as it moves through nature, particularly. And whereas the painting can have a reference to nature, the outer world, but also just stands on its own. And I've seen them, several of them in museums, and I just don't want to leave. I've always, there's a couple in DC at the National Gallery, and I always just want to stand there and just soak it up. And it has a very compelling, pulls me in, and I just feel this tremendous sense of admiration for what she's done. I know how it may look simple, but I know how difficult it is. So that's my sense of her. So certainly, whether you feel that way or not, she certainly was one of the big names in American art in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Yeah. Any other comments before we move on from her? Okay. Then we're going to go to Elizabeth Vigee Le Brun. So she was for the fact that there was the women in the 50s were still struggling to get equal billing with the men. So you can imagine what it was like back in the late 1700s. The fact that she accomplished what Elizabeth Vigee Le Brun accomplished, what she did, is amazing. Her father was a painter, so she was trained by him early on. And by the age of 14, she was a portrait artist, and she was selling her portraits as a early teenager. And she was getting recognition. And just eventually, the aristocracy, she did all these paintings of aristocrats all over Europe. But she even got the attention of Marie Antoinette, and then they you weren't allowed to sell paintings unless you were a member of the guild, and she wasn't. And so these guys showed up in her studio and just confiscated her paints and her paintbrushes, and they wouldn't let her paint until she was a member of the guild. Good luck, because they only took 4 women a year or something at most. No, they had a quota. And the woman, if you got into the guild, you were not allowed to take art lessons in the salon because they had male nudes, and of course a woman couldn't look at a male nude.
Oh.
Every way they were handicapped. But Marie Antoinette put pressure on her husband, the king, to allow her into the guild. And so she was allowed in because the king told the guild, you have to let her in. And you can imagine how jealous the other men that, yeah. So, but the fact is she's the official portrait painter of Marie Antoinette. It's like, whoa. So she was above them, and you can imagine them grumbling behind her back, but she had to put up with. And then, she's very successful. And then the revolution happened, and Marie got her head cut off, and so did all the rest. And she had to clear out of France because she was a member of the guild, and the revolutionaries, they wanted to kill her. So she took her daughter and got out of there and went to Russia and was equally successful painting all of the aristocrats, Tolstoy's niece or somebody. And then she went to Italy, same thing. Everywhere she went, all over Europe, all the aristocrats wanted her to do portraits. And you can see why. She flattered them. And had mastered the art of the old masters, how to, apply paint and layers. But when you look at her paintings, they may seem conventional, but for her time, she was breaking new ground, and she got criticism for it. One of the things is official portraits. If you were in the aristocracy, you had to look formal or kind of stiff, right? You had to look regal, and she was able to make the person look relaxed and natural, like more and very contemporary in that sense. Not, like they would not. Even though they're in these beautiful costumes and the royal outfits and gowns, there was something very natural and like they're the way they are without being official. And that was revolutionary. And she got criticism for that. And the other thing that she did was with her own self-portraits and other portraits is to show a little bit of her teeth. Oh, that was, big deal. But she got attacked for that, for showing teeth. Oh my God, that's like she was painting a self-portrait in a nude or something. Her teeth. Oh my God, it's like it's the worst thing you could do. It's like it's horrifying, teeth are to be hidden, just like your private parts. So, but it's like this natural. And the other thing you'll see, her skin colors are perfected, but it's like everybody's been airbrushed. There's no imperfections. No one has any pockmarks or age lines. And that, of course, that's why the aristocracy liked her. Everyone looked like they were, like when you die and go to heaven in certain Christian mythology, you get the best age and your beauty back in heaven. It was like that. She was painting them people like that. So it was like, yeah, everyone has been airbrushed like a glamour magazine, so, but she was good at it. And then, there's this quality. Also look for this, like in her portraits, you get a sense of the person. They're not just a stiff image, in the official portraits, the real person's hiding behind their officialdom. With her paintings, you really get a sense of the person, of who that is, and it comes through. So, so she had all those. Qualities. So she was unique in that the aristocracy. She flattered them. She made them look royal, and yet at the same time, she made them look natural. Okay, so that was a delicate line, a fine line she had to walk there, and she did it better than anybody else, apparently. So let's look at some of these.
We're in the Louvre in Paris, looking at a self-portrait by the artist Vigee Le Brun.
But interestingly, a portrait with her daughter, Julie. Being a mother who has a daughter named Julie, I especially love this painting.
When we think about late 18th century painting, we so often think of grand history painting or mythological subjects. And here we see a modest portrait that is all about intimacy.
Vigee Le Brun was the official court painter to the Queen of France, to Marie Antoinette. And the year this was painted, 1789, is the year of the French Revolution. Only a couple of years from now, Marie Antoinette will be beheaded by the revolutionaries.
And Vigee Le Brun herself will leave France.
She'll have her citizenship revoked because of her support of the monarchy, and less than a decade later, her citizenship will be restored.
Well, she was held in extremely high regard by the French painting establishment.
It's important to remember that there were only 4 positions available to women artists within the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, the institution in control of the fine arts in France. As a woman artist, she was up against many, many obstacles that her male colleagues didn't face.
The brilliance of this painting makes clear why she was accepted into the Academy.
And that brilliance to me is in how much the faces and those gestures communicate the affection of a mother and daughter.
When this was painted, the monarchy was being accused of living a life that was entirely one of artifice.
Out of touch with normal people in France.
And this is a painting that is all about authenticity. Vigee Le Brun herself moved among the aristocracy, and in a sense, this painting is establishing that authenticity and aristocracy were not mutually exclusive. One of my favorite passages is the way that Julie's right eye is nestled against the artist's neck, shadowed by her chin. There is this wonderful sense of touch. Look at the way that the arms reach around, and you can almost feel those small hands.
And to me, Vigee Le Brun's eyes communicate sheer pleasure in this embrace of her daughter, and their bodies together form a pyramid. They form this single shape as though they're merged together as one. And there's a sense of genuine affection here that I think you're right, was not something associated with the aristocracy, and to assert that natural, genuine emotion as something that is felt by people who move in very high circles like Vigee Le Brun had a political dimension to it.
You can see that also in the dress. The artist is rendering herself in a dress that recalls the ancient Greek. And this style, a la grecque, was part of this idea in the late 18th century that one can go back to a style that both ennobles but is in some ways more inherently natural.
More simple, more direct.
In contrast to the ornate hoop skirts and gowns often worn during formal occasions.
Look at Vigee Le Brun's hair. The curls are unruly. There's an informality that did have this political dimension.
Although I would say it is a studied informality.
Absolutely.
There's something very contingent here. That embrace only lasts a moment.
It only lasts for a moment, but the feeling of affection is universal and timeless. Vigee Le Brun was successful among the aristocracy in Europe broadly. This was a woman who moved easily among the royal courts of Europe and was highly successful.
In Russia, in Austria,
in Italy,
and in London.
Although there were many difficulties faced by women artists, it's fascinating to see a woman as successful as Vigee Le Brun presenting herself so powerfully as a mother.
Elizabeth Louise Vigee Le Brun was the last great royal portrait painter in France. Her talent and ambition took her to Versailles as portraitiste to Marie Antoinette. With the French Revolution, her association with the Queen forced her to flee, a 13-year exile taking her to the courts of Naples, Vienna, and St. Petersburg. The most famous woman artist in Europe, she painted more than 600 portraits. From the monarchy to the modern world, the unique story of this woman, talented and free, became interwoven with history. Vigee Le Brun, woman artist in revolutionary France. An exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art from February 15th to May 15th, 2016.
Elizabeth Louise Vigee Le Brun is an 18th century French portrait painter. She became incredibly famous at the end of the 18th century in France, and then with the Revolution, packed up her bags, took her daughter and travelled all over Europe. She's a powerhouse. She's someone who's incredibly modern in her work ethic, in the way that she makes a reputation and just gets out there and really kind of conquers the European portrait market. Vigee Le Brun is born in Paris in 1755. She starts out from a relatively modest background. She has some training early on from her father, who is also an artist, but he actually dies when she's only 12, so it's not as if she's got a really long apprenticeship with him. But the family are clearly connected in artistic circles and knows enough other artists to be able to encourage her to continue her studies. Probably that's a real game changer, because for a woman in the 18th century, there are no kind of formal courses for becoming an artist, but she's also just very feisty and independent. So by the time she's 14, she's producing portraits, certainly contributing to the family income. She's a kind of fully established artist working in her own right. I mean, that would be extraordinary if you were a male artist, but to be a female artist as well, it's kind of even more breathtaking. It didn't stop her always getting into trouble. When she was about 19, she actually had all her brushes and her artist's material confiscated because she'd been so successful. She'd come to the attention of the authorities because she didn't actually have membership of either a guild or an academy, but she'd just kind of gone and done it anyway. Having sort of been slapped on the wrist, she very quickly went off and got guild membership in order to be able to continue this very promising and exciting career. She's married to a picture dealer, but actually the marriage dissolves quite quickly because he's gambling away all her money. She's the one who looks after their daughter and travels around Europe, and there's letters in which she's saying, how hard I have to work to keep a nursemaid, to keep a roof over our heads, to get a tutor for our daughter. She's someone who's absolutely driven and working incredibly hard to make that life and that lifestyle work for her family. Vigee Le Brun is predominantly known for her portraits. She kind of skyrocketed to fame in the late 1770s because she was the first portraitist who can really produce a kind of satisfactory likeness of the young Marie Antoinette. On the one hand, she does produce these kind of formal state portraits. On the other, she produces images that are much more kind of maternal and tender, like Mademoiselle Brogniart, this lovely young, very cheeky-looking girl with her bag pulling the wool out of it. And it's that Vigee Le Brun really becomes known for, being able to paint portraits that convey a sort of emotional tenor with them as well. This is a self-portrait, and it's where we actually meet Vigee Le Brun.
Beautiful.
She's staring out at us very confidently, wearing these beautiful fine clothes, so she's clearly dressed up, this wonderful finery. But in her hand, she's also holding her artist's material, her palette with these great big globs of paint all over it. You can see her brushes, which she's clearly been using because the ends of them have little bits of paint on. She's on the one hand this very young, very attractive, very beautifully dressed woman, and on the other hand, quite literally in her other hand, is her profession. This is a self-portrait that's saying, I'm an artist, I'm also a woman, I can absolutely do both. And even more than that, it's also a self-portrait that's correcting the old masters. Rubens painted a portrait of a young woman in a hat that was always known as the straw hat. But if you look at it, you'll see it's not a straw hat at all. And Vigee Le Brun, we know, saw this portrait in Brussels, and then she comes back and she paints her self-portrait and she corrects the mistake. So look at her here in her beautiful straw hat. Not only is she comparing herself to Rubens, she's actually saying, look, I can go one better. It is just a fact that there are fewer paintings by women artists at the National Gallery than there are by male artists, but I think you have to take into account the time period we cover. Vigee Le Brun grows up clearly before the Revolution, and so she's very much in that world, which was a very kind of strictly hierarchized art world. In order to operate as an artist in Paris, you had to be a member of the Guild or the Académie Royale. But the Academy is not exactly open for women. They actually make a limit in the 18th century to say they won't admit more than 4 women at any given time. If you're a male artist and you join the Academy, you have immediately this great community of peers. If you're a woman, you can only exhibit at the salon. You don't get any of the lessons, you don't get to draw from live models. You can't let a woman go anywhere near a naked man. So it is just a totally, totally different world. Vigee Le Brun did actually get membership to the Académie Royale, but she got it in a rather unusual way. Instead of the usual kind of strict admittance procedures, The king just admitted her point blank one day, clearly at his wife's urging, and you can imagine how her fellow male academicians felt about this. She had this kind of incredibly prestigious door opened for her. If I stop and think about it, I'm a young woman at the beginning of the 21st century. The opportunities I've had would have been unimaginable to somebody, a woman in the late 18th century. So I look at someone like Vigee Le Brun and I just think, my goodness, what a trailblazer, what an absolute powerhouse to have the strength of your convictions and the passion and the drive to be able to do that then. We're dealing with many of the same issues. You know, women are still trying to be taken seriously at work. They are still trying to juggle work and families. Women have been doing this successfully for hundreds of years, and we're only going to get better at it.
One more short one. Start her painting. But like I was saying, even in a painting like this, which is kind of formal in a way, would you agree? I think the person still comes through, and how it's not so formal that you lose the sense of the person, and their individuality comes through. It's not easy to do. Would you agree with that? Can you hear me?
We heard you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so you can see also that she represented what artists later rebelled against, that were just artists in service to the aristocracy, artists flattering, you know, the privileged few, artists presenting people in these idealized airbrushed ways with their, you know, no one has any pockmarks, or artists not wanting to paint the common man, et cetera, et cetera. So she did it extremely well. And then with all the social and is it real, you know, unrealism. It's realism to an extent, but also not real, you know. It's
it's 3 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah. So that's her. That's before I show that History of Blue, any comments about her?
Wow.
Yeah,
I can't hear Sue, you're muted. I can't hear you if you said something.
incredible talent.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, she mastered all the old master skills. Yeah, incredible painter.
Inspiring, isn't it?
That's what?
Inspiring.
Yeah, but I know.
What I was saying, oops, sorry, Joe. What I was saying was I'd like her to come and paint me now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. No wrinkles.
No wrinkles, right. I wonder who she became in her next life, where she went artistic. But who she was before. I mean, you don't become a successful portrait painter as a woman at the age of 14 without having done it in a past life. No way, you know, she just picked up where she left off. She must have been, you know, she had to be an accomplished portrait painter in a previous life. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And they are beautiful. It's like you know, if you say, oh, painting should just paint beauty and just beautiful objects and beautiful things, then she would represent that, if you believe that. And yet so much of 20th century just went in the opposite direction. I don't know if you will cover like Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. Francis Bacon Lucian Freud's nudes will stand in direct opposition to these overweight people and all their flaws on their skin and everything. You know, it's like, oh yeah, enough of that stuff, you know, and this kind of gross you out. But yeah, so. But it's a glamour magazine for the rich, is what she.
Yeah.
Okay, so but it's good to know she was. How many people have heard of her? And that's the thing. She was a woman. How many people? Almost nobody has ever heard of her. And yet, in her life, she was the most famous portrait creator in Europe. And yet, goodbye. That's her. And she's not even in the. No one knows of her. Yeah. So, all right. So let's see. Is the sound okay? Because there was some complaint last time about the sound. Is that all right? Has it been okay?
A little louder.
Huh?
Maybe a little louder.
A little louder, okay. All right, here we go. BBC History of Art, 3 colors. I really like this documentary. I think it's really good.
This is the BBC television service. We now present another program in our series of experimental transmissions in color.
We live.
If the sound isn't good, like scream or say something so we can fix it, okay? Is it okay so far?
In a
so okay so far? Yeah.
Kaleidoscopic world. But colors are more than mere decoration. Colors carry deep and significant meanings for us all. In this series, I want to unravel the stories of 3 colors. 3 colors which, in the hands of artists, have stirred our emotions, changed the way we behave, and even altered the course of history. Gold. Its lustrous shine has made this the most intoxicating color. One we've used throughout history to revere the things we hold most sacred. White. Once the virtuous color of ancient marbles, came to embody our darkest instincts. And in this program, a color that for artists has always been the most beguiling of all. The unique thing about blue is that it is all around us, and yet somehow it feels forever out of reach. As we can never touch the blueness of the sea or the blueness of the sky, and we can never reach the blue horizon over there in the distance. And for these reasons, blue has captured our imaginations, offering us the tantalizing prospect of entirely new worlds beyond our own. From the moment a mysterious cargo arrived from across the seas, artists have used blue to transport us to strange and exotic realms. From Giotto's heavenly visions to Titian's gardens of earthly delight. From Picasso's melancholy yearnings to Yves Klein's dreams of escape. Throughout his whole life, his goal was to leave this world behind him. We'll reveal how these artists searched for the perfect blue to capture the great beyond. And finally, how one powerful image showed us that blue was not the color of other worlds. It was the color of our own. Our story of blue begins 1,000 years ago, on the edge of Europe. This is the Venetian lagoon. Across these waters sailed merchants from the east. They were hungry for Venetian gold, and in exchange, they brought a mysterious cargo. It was a rare, almost mythical substance that could only be found in one tiny mine on the far side of what is now Afghanistan. And to get here to Venice, it had travelled some 3,500 miles across mountain ranges, across deserts, and finally across the Mediterranean Sea. What the Arab sailors had brought was a precious stone, and it was called lapis lazuli. And this stone possessed a colour so enchanting that it would change art in dramatic ways. So, this is it. Now, I must say I have never seen such a large chunk of lapis before, and I'm quite surprised at how complex and beautiful it is, actually. You can see how rich and deep and amazing this blue is. And the whole impression of this stone is that it looks a bit like the sky. It looks a bit like a fragment of the sky has just sort of fallen down to earth and I've picked it up. So you can really understand why people love this substance so much. As strange as it may seem, blue hardly existed in the history of Western art. It's nowhere to be found among the earthy colours of prehistoric cave paintings. The Greeks didn't even have a word for it. And the Romans had little time for blue in their wall paintings at Pompeii. Even in the Middle Ages, the blues they had were feeble and pallid. And so the artists of medieval Venice couldn't wait to get their hands on the wondrous blue of lapis lazuli.
Okay, here we go.
So you probably need to be pretty strong, don't you?
Yeah, this is like sculpting marble. I mean, this is a hard stone. I mean, it's hard. It's physically hard. It's heavy. And you have to be very patient. And you're talking about a process of 1 week to even 2 weeks.
Alan Pascuzzi is an Italian artist who has studied the ingenious process that took his medieval forebears centuries to perfect.
We're going to put it in the mortar, and eventually what we have to do is begin to grind this up. And the thing of it is, you don't want to waste one bit of this, because the lapis lazuli is, exponentially more expensive than any other pigment. Lapis, took how many months of travel to get there? You don't want to lose even one piece of it.
Days would pass, slowly grinding the rock until it was reduced to a fine blue dust. The blue dust was encased in beeswax, pine resin, and gum arabic to purge it of impurities, and then placed into a mixture too caustic to touch. It really brings home to you how important colour is to people, that they would go to this huge effort.
Exactly.
Just to make a colour. It's amazing, isn't
Exactly, and I think that's the power of art. And by association, art is, you want to make it as beautiful as possible.
And finally, after weeks of torturous labour, every particle of the precious blue essence was released. The hard stone of lapis lazuli had been transformed. And this is the finished product. Ultramarine. And they called it that because that's quite literally from where it came, from across the seas. Now, today we're surrounded by bright blue things. But to the people of the late Middle Ages, this colour was a revelation. It was brighter and purer and stronger than any blue they had ever seen. Within just a few decades of this remarkable discovery, blue began to seep into Western art. It crept across the pages of illuminated manuscripts. It wrapped itself around their sacred words. And it slipped into the backgrounds of biblical scenes. But blue would soon become more than a decorative flourish. Our story now takes us to Padua. Here, a pioneering artist would indulge in blue like never before, elevating this once lowly colour to divine status. In 1303, Giotto, often called the father of the Italian Renaissance, set to work at the Scrovegni Chapel. While it looks austere from the outside, inside, Giotto had created a masterpiece. This may just be one of the 2 or 3 most important rooms in Western art, and almost every square inch of it is covered in paintings by Giotto, dealing with the life of Christ and the life of the Virgin Mary. You can see over there, that's the Last Supper. Come through and you can see here the washing of the feet. But my favourite image in here, and probably the most famous of them, is this one. Judas leaning in to kiss Christ. And what amazes me is this was painted 700 years ago, and still the suspense is unbearable. And that is the brilliance of Giotto. He took religious art and he made it feel like it was something that was just taking place on the streets in everyday life. These paintings are dramatic and original. But I think Giotto's most striking invention here is not on the walls at all. It's on the ceiling. Above us, we have the most beautiful, the most brilliant, deep blue vault that's dusted with hundreds of golden stars. Now, you may think that's the sky, but it's not the sky. This blue ceiling is actually a depiction of heaven. This is how Giotto imagined heaven. For Giotto, heaven is blue. And if you don't believe it, have a look up and you'll see the Virgin Mary and Jesus and various other prophets peeking out of the blue heaven and looking down on us. And for me, this is just the most amazing thing because, you know, only a few years before this chapel was painted, blue was a really minor colour in the history of Western art. It really was. I mean, it didn't have much of a big role to play. But here, only a few years after that recipe for ultramarine had been mastered, Giotto takes the colour blue and he turns it into the colour that is the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most sacred of them all. The colour of paradise itself. In the eyes of the church, blue was now the most sacrosanct of colours.
Il blu sembra essere colore divino. L'azzurro è un qualche cosa che copre un mistero. Cioè, al di là del cielo, al di là delle stelle, chi c'è? Ecco, è il mistero di Dio a cui accenna esattamente attraverso il colore blu intenso.
But blue was now so divine but the church greedily sought to control it. They restricted its supply and inflated its price. Before long, blue became even more expensive than gold. In the 1300s, laws were passed that banned citizens from wearing the colour. Only one person, it seemed, could always be robed in blue. The Mother of God herself. In this Madonna and Child, Italy, 1420. The Visitation, Flemish, 1445. And here, German, 1490. But it was in Venice, the spiritual home of blue, that the colour would be liberated from the suffocating grip of the church. And one painter who dared to do this was Titian. Titian was born among the foothills of the Alps around 1490. But as a young man, he was soon drawn to Venice. When Titian arrived here, Venice was the undisputed world leader in colour. It had the raw materials, it had the clientele, and it had the know-how. So virtually every pigment known to man was available along this canal. Titian was a colour addict. And when it came to blue, he wore his heart on his sleeve. For him, the church's control of the colour must have been deeply frustrating. And in one of his first great commissions, he made his feelings known in a most explicit way. So this is the Pesaro altarpiece, and Titian started it in 1519 when he was still a young man. He's put virtually every colour, virtually every single pigment he can find here in Venice on that painting. There's something he's done here that no artist has done before. He's put the Virgin Mary to the side of the painting. Now, throughout history, the Virgin Mary had always been in the centre. To move her up the steps and on the side was sort of, tantamount to heresy, really. And taking her place at the heart of the picture is a rich swathe of ultramarine blue, with a very lucky St. Peter underneath it. But Titian's obsession with blue would only be fully understood when one of his greatest paintings began to fall apart.
I've been looking at this picture now for over 20 years, watching it deteriorate slowly. Here I'm looking for minute blisters, which are very difficult to see.
009. Experiment begins.
In 1967, 450 years after it was painted, Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne was in intensive care.
After I do this, of course I have the whole picture X-rayed.
At London's National Gallery, Mr. Arthur Lucas was undertaking a daring experiment in art restoration.
059. Focus clear.
With a surgical hand, he began to remove a thick skin of varnish and dirt. And as he did so, he made an astonishing discovery. Patches of the most brilliant blues. Blues applied by Titian's hand centuries before.
And when it's all finished,
Do you think that this picture is going to look like the picture Titian intended?
Well, it'll look very near, I think. The picture will look very beautiful when it's finished.
And here it is, Bacchus and Ariadne, a famous scene from Roman mythology. Arthur Lucas's restoration of Bacchus and Ariadne shocked all who saw it, because no one knew just how colourful Titian's paintings could be. But for me, the most dramatic thing about this painting is, of course, the blue. Because this is an utter barnstormer. And you know, when you look at this painting, almost half of it, if you look diagonally that way, almost half of it is blue. And it must have cost Titian an utter fortune. But my word, it was worth the money because it's so delicious, and he has used it all the way through the painting. He's used it in Ariadne's cloak. He's used it in this reveler's dress. He's used it in the amazing mountains on the horizon. And of course, he's used it in this sky, this unforgettable sky. As we've already seen, blue was incredibly powerfully controlled by the church. Controlled by religious conventions, how much you could use and where you could use it. And in this painting, Titian has just blown that away and said, I'm going to use blue wherever I like. And you know, there's something heretical about that as well. Because as we have seen, blue was usually reserved for the cloak of the Virgin Mary. And look, the purest ultramarine in this painting is the cloak of this reveler here. And she couldn't be further away from the Virgin Mary. She hasn't even bothered to put her breast away. And for me, this is the moment when blue gets stripped of conventions, stripped of received wisdom, stripped of hierarchical meanings, and it just gets used for fun. After centuries under the strict control of the church, Titian seemed to liberate blue from the shackles of religion. But let's now travel to another time and place, a place where blue would be transformed once again, turned into the colour of our deepest emotions. We're no longer in Renaissance Italy, but Germany at the end of the 18th century. It was the Romantic Age. These were the days of delicate sensibilities and wild imaginings, of brooding heroes and wandering poets. In 1799, a German Romantic writer by the name of Novalis began work on an epic novel. Its eponymous hero was a boy, Heinrich von Ofterdingen, whose lucid visions keep him from sleep.
The young man lay uneasily on his couch. It's like a dream, as if I had dozed off into another world, he said to himself.
His wild fantasies led him on a journey across the landscape of his own imagination. Heinrich was restless because there was something he couldn't get out of his head. It was the most powerful longing he'd ever experienced. And it wasn't for money, it wasn't for power, it wasn't even for a woman. What Heinrich was yearning for was a small blue flower.
It's not material treasures which have awakened such a powerful longing in me. but I long to look on the blue flower. It fills my senses ceaselessly, and I can think and breathe nothing else. All emotions rose within him to an unprecedented peak.
The novel proved to be a sensation. Throughout Europe, it captivated the hearts and minds of those who read it. The blue flower quickly lodged itself in the romantic imagination, and it profoundly transformed the meaning of the colour blue. Because it was that story, more than perhaps anything else, that made blue the great colour of our deepest feelings. Today, Novalis' book has mostly been forgotten, but its legacy permeated through the 1800s. So when artists tapped into their deepest feelings, they repeatedly called on blue. It dances in the dreams of Gauguin's sleeping son. It haunts the starry night of Van Gogh's troubled soul. And it embraces the private passions of Edvard Munch's lovers.
Just an aside here, I mentioned Joni Mitchell in the beginning, and her most famous best-selling album that she won all kinds of awards for is titled Blue. And then there's also Miles Davis' Kind of Blue, which is the most best-selling jazz album of all time. Those two albums, Joni Mitchell's Blue and Kind of Blue, were two of the greatest albums of the 20th century.
But as the 19th century drew to a close, one artist would harness the emotional power of blue like no other. Today we remember Picasso as a macho playboy and brave abstractionist. But as a young man, he made his debut with an astonishingly accomplished series of paintings. The works of Picasso's Blue Period are known across the world, but few know the real story behind them. A story of suicide, of despair, and the search for redemption. Picasso was born in Spain in 1881, and like many a young man, he felt the urge to leave home. In October 1900, when he was just 19 years old, Picasso decided to leave Spain. But he wouldn't make the journey alone. Sitting next to him the whole way was his best friend, Carlos Casagemas, and together they planned to make their names on the international stage. And as far as they were concerned, there was only one place to go. Paris. When Picasso and Casagemas arrived here, they stepped off the train and into the very centre of the world. All nations had converged at the Universal Exhibition to showcase their new ideas, new architecture, and new inventions. Thomas Edison was there to capture the extravaganza on his pioneering movie camera. And I always wonder if somewhere, lost in the crowd, is a wide-eyed Picasso with his friend Casagemas. But while they marvelled at the wonders of the exhibition by day, when night fell, they indulged in more salacious pleasures. Now, Picasso and Casagemas were all but penniless, yet they took advantage of almost everything that Paris had to offer. They went sightseeing, they networked, they tried almost every drug going, and they seduced as many women as possible. But their fun would not last forever. Paris was oblivious to two young artists trying to make their way. And while Picasso kept the faith, Casagemas was consumed with frustration. He began to lose his grip on sanity, with disastrous consequences. On the evening of the 17th of February 1901, Carlos Casagemas washed up in a bar with his girlfriend. But as the wine flowed, an embarrassing scene developed. People didn't know where to look. And then things got ugly. Casagemas had pulled a gun on his lover. Fortunately, Casagemas missed his girlfriend. She dived under the table the moment he fired the gun, and she escaped virtually unscathed. But he thought she was dead, so he turned the gun on himself. He brought the revolver up to his right temple, he pulled the trigger, and he shot himself dead. Picasso was horrified when he heard the news of his best friend's suicide, and he struggled to come to terms with the death. Picasso was so bereft that he started to behave rather strangely. In fact, he set about taking over his best friend's identity. He started sleeping with Casagemas' girlfriend. He moved in to Casagemas' apartment, and he started producing paintings that compulsively, and I think self-destructively, revisited the tragedy. He repeatedly painted Casagemas, blue in his coffin, the bullet wound still raw. A mythical reenactment of the funeral soon followed, where prostitutes and faceless mourners are engulfed in a blue haze. Such bizarre paintings couldn't escape the eyes of a man who made it his business to probe the most intimate parts of the human mind. Carl Jung was one of the most celebrated psychoanalysts of his day.
Lorsque Jung a découvert cette œuvre, eh bien, il était tout aussitôt impressionné, il a été tout aussitôt frappé et il a été tout aussitôt touché par l'œuvre de Picasso.
Dr. Christian Gaillard is a disciple of Jung and shares his master's interest in Picasso.
Eh bien, il dit que ce qui le frappe, c'est précisément le bleu. De quel bleu s'agit-il, se demande Jung. Et il répond, c'est un bleu nuit. Et ceci intéresse beaucoup Jung. Il pense plus spécifiquement au bleu qui marque les enfers dans la tradition égyptienne. C'est-à-dire que la mort, le passage par la mort, se profilerait peut-être là. Et on se demande bien ce qu'on va trouver, ce qu'on va rencontrer, à quelle rencontre on aura affaire.
The infernal path that Picasso walked was littered with harrowing figures, veiled in blue. A skeletal musician is hunched over his guitar. A woman is lost in melancholy. A blind actress stares blankly out from the canvas.
Picasso n'a pas choisi le bleu. Évidemment, un vrai artiste ne choisit pas ce qu'il va faire. Le bleu est apparu dans son œuvre. De bleu nuit qui va vers les enfers, vers des rencontres difficiles, vers une menace d'éclatement, vers une mélancolie noire. Peut-être plus que bleu nuit, mais bleu noir. Ce qui peut-être l'inquiète, ce qui d'ailleurs ici l'effraie, c'est bien sûr ce menace d'éclatement intérieur jusqu'au chaos, un éclatement effrayé qui caractérise les schizophrènes.
For Jung, the blue in Picasso's work signaled his descent into schizophrenia. But I think blue did even more than that. What we see here is this wonderfully beautiful porcelain-like girl in this white chemise, surrounded by this huge blue background, almost as though she's drowning in a dirty ocean. And yet she's got this wonderful, evocative, mysterious wry smile on her face as she stares out into the distance. Now, Picasso painted this picture in 1904, 1905, so right at the very end of his blue period. And it is still smothered in that dark, haunting colour. And look at this passage on the right. This is not the lush, rich blue of ultramarine. These are the rancid tones of the new synthetic blues that had just been invented. And they give this whole painting a really cheap, seedy, cadaverous quality. And I don't think it would have that quality in any other colour. I mean, imagine this painting in orange, or in purple, or in red, or in yellow. It wouldn't be anywhere near as unsettling as it is now. But look closer at this painting, and you can see new colours coming out of the blue smoke, the colours of life, the flesh tones, the incredibly fresh white linens, and that absolutely stunning, luscious pink that he's put on the girl's lips. And that, I think, is a sign that finally, after 3 really difficult years, Picasso is painting his way out of that ordeal. And it's almost as though the very act of applying that blue paint to the canvas is an act of catharsis, getting it out of his system so finally he can move on. Picasso finally left his trauma behind and set off on the path to becoming the macho modernist that we know today. And the moment he did so, his blue period came to an end.
C'est fini.
But in just a few decades, a painter would emerge who would never give up on blue. He was a Frenchman called Yves Klein, and in the years before his tragic early death, he would devote himself to making paintings that were not only in blue, they were about blue. Klein would even invent his very own blue, and he believed it could change the world. Fittingly, his story begins amid the dazzling blues of the Côte d'Azur. This was a place where affluent sun-seekers mixed with the glamorous celebrity Sept. But set apart from this superficial razzmatazz, there walked 3 young dreamers. One summer, they were strolling along the beach, admiring the scenery. They lay down, and in a moment of youthful idealism, decided to divide the whole world between them. The first friend chose the earth. The second friend chose language, but the third friend chose the sky. And on doing so, he reached up to the celestial dome above him and signed his name across it. And the name he signed was Yves Klein. Yves Klein was born in Nice in 1928. He was the son of two bohemian artists and grew up indifferent to the gaudy glamour that surrounded him. He tried almost everything to escape. He became a jockey. He danced the night away. And he even started on a path to becoming a judo master. But Yves had another plan up his sleeve. He decided to become an artist. He lost himself making paintings, each of just a single block of colour. Red, slightly less red, and yellow. But the colour that captivated him most was the colour of the sky. Now, Yves Klein never forgot that blue sky of his childhood here in Nice. And I think for him, it was a great symbol of escape. Escape from all the worldly concerns, the consumerism, the materialism of the world around him. And it was in his late 20s that he decided that the best way to escape from those concerns was to create a new colour, a new blue that was as deep and rich and open and liberating as the sky itself. So, off to Paris he went. He knew that here there lived a legendary colour maker, a man so steeped in the mysteries and magic of colour that Picasso, Bacon and countless others had entrusted him with preparing their precious paints. Now Yves too made his pilgrimage to the atelier of Edouard Adam.
Sur ce bleu de Prusse, le bleu d'outre-mer. Ce qui l'intéressait, c'était le bleu de la mer et le bleu du ciel. C'est ça, c'était le bleu et l'infini. Il était passionné par l'infini.
Here at the studio, Yves explained the problem. That traditional oil used to turn blue pigment into paint always adulterated the colour. So to achieve the pure, luminous blue of the sky, Edouard invented a secret ingredient, and he called it, cryptically, the medium.
On va voir le médium qui est transparent incolore. Donc, mélanger ce pigment avec ce médium, il gardait presque totalement son intensité et sa couleur originelle. Bon, on y va?
And there, right before his eyes, Yves' dream of a new blue was turning into reality.
Ce qui était merveilleux, c'était son regard. C'est un enfant. Il jubilait de voir ce qui venait de se passer. Ça lui avait énormément plu. Et voilà, effectivement, c'est ça. C'était le bleu. Ce n'était que ça. Et c'était tout ça. C'était un mystique, mystificateur. Vous pouvez traduire ça, un mystique, mystificateur.
Yves christened his new paint International Klein Blue. He was so proud that he wanted to cast its spell across the whole world. He inaugurated a blue revolution so that everyone could share in the joy of his new colour. He released 1,001 blue balloons into the sky above Paris. He planned to turn Cleopatra's Needle blue. In this revolution, anything that took his fancy was treated to his new blue. And he even wrote a letter to President Eisenhower asking him to join in. Dwight thought about it and decided it would be better not to respond. Undeterred, Yves continued to fill the world with his blue art. But my favourite part of Yves' blue revolution was a series of paintings, all identical, and each a devotion to nothing but international Klein blue.
So this is one of Yves Klein's blue monochromes. And believe it or not, a huge amount of time and effort went into making this look exactly the way it looks. First of all, Yves Klein was meticulous about his choice of canvas. So here he has selected a very thin-weaved cotton scrim. And then he has coated that cotton scrim with a kind of milk. And then he painstakingly rolled the paint as evenly as possible onto this picture so it could be as uniform as possible. And you know, it's amazing. When you look closely, the textures are just fantastic on this painting. What it actually looks like is looking down at a very blue sea from a plane. You can see just those little waves and the ripples in the light. Well, I must say, this is pretty much the best blue I have ever seen, even better than Titian's, because it's just perfect. It's not too dark, it's not too light, and it does this amazing thing. It almost seems to be moving. 1 second it recedes into the distance like the sky, and the next second it comes towards you and drowns you like the ocean. But what does it mean? Well, I don't think Yves wants us to try to work out what it means. I think he simply wants us to stand in front of it, to experience it, and to enjoy it. You know, he called these pictures open windows to freedom. And I think that's all he's asking of us. Just to set aside our everyday lives, just for a few minutes, to open our eyes, to open our minds, and to follow him just briefly into the great blue beyond.
But Yves would go one step further in escaping into the great blue beyond. In 1960, he travelled out to the most mundane suburb of Paris he could find. And it was there that he would perform his most audacious feat of escapology. On one quiet Sunday morning here on the Rue Gentil-Bernard, he slipped into an apartment building and made his way upstairs.
So when he reached the first floor room at almost exactly this point, Yves Klein opened the windows and leapt out.
In the distance, a train rushes through the station, while a cyclist is oblivious to the drama unfolding behind him. Yves' artwork became known as the leap into the void. And I think the black and white photograph he took that day reveals more about Yves Klein's ambitions than any of his other works.
Throughout his whole life, his goal was to leave this world behind him and to voyage into this utopian world above. And you can see here his eyes are locked onto the blue sky above him. I also think it's a rather desperate image too, because Eve never really leapt into the void. In fact, he fell down to earth, and fortunately had a group of judo friends there to catch him on the pavement. They've been erased by the photo montage, so we can't see them any longer. And I think this proves in some ways that the laws of physics finally defeated the laws of Eve's imagination. By the early 1960s, Eve was on the verge of becoming the most exciting artist of his generation. But then disaster struck. In 1962, he returned home to the south of France to attend the Cannes Film Festival. During the premiere of a film in which he starred, Eve suffered multiple heart attacks. He was dead at the age of 34. Yves Klein's Blue Revolution was, I think, one of the most beautiful moments in modern art. But it was really fragile too. And when he died, it seemed that his great dream of this fantastic blue adventure that could liberate humanity from all of its earthly concerns would only die with him. But here in America, of all places, a new adventure was just beginning. And I think it would transform our relationship to blue in one astounding way.
There's a moon out tonight.
For centuries, blue had been used by artists to capture the great beyond, the forever unattainable. But as the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union reached its zenith, one man created a single powerful image that brings our story to a close. His image would change the way that artists, and all of us, think about blue for good. But he wasn't an artist. He was an astronaut. It was 1967 when America was launching its most daring space flight yet.
In 5 days' time, these 3 men will fly to the moon.
The Apollo 8 mission aimed to send 3 men out of the Earth's orbit and to circle the moon for the very first time.
I think as we depart the Earth and head on out towards the moon, the Earth becomes smaller and smaller, that not only will the continents blend together, but I think man's problems will hopefully blend together, and maybe we can start things off generating a spirit of cooperation and of goodwill towards men with this flight.
All the talk was of world peace, but that fooled no one.
This was the era of the Cold War, and I was a Cold Warrior. We were really intent on beating those dirty commies.
Bill Anders was one of the chosen men on the Apollo 8 space rocket. It was Christmas Eve 1968 when he and his 2 fellow astronauts boarded the aircraft.
We've now passed the 10-minute mark in our countdown. We have 9 minutes, 51 seconds and counting. All aspects of the mission go at this time.
You're on Saturn V, you strapped in on Saturn V. How did you feel?
Sitting on top of the Saturn V, which was a mini nuclear bomb itself, caught your attention. But eventually I fell asleep briefly while we sat there. Again, this was the Cold War. We were going to show those dirty commies that we were better. And so the danger of that, I had raced out of my mind.
10, 9.
Now, when the rockets lit off, that was a different matter.
We have liftoff.
It was violent. There was nobody on it beforehand to tell us. It was like being shaken sideways as these giant engines were steering to keep this broomstick, straight up. so it was a violent and surprising event.
Thrust is okay. Roger thrust. Roger,
Apollo 8 pierced through every hue of the big blue sky. And the whole world watched on. But those watching most intently were, of course, the NASA technicians here at Mission Control in Houston.
We have you go for orbit here. Go for orbit.
Welcome to the moon, Houston.
Thank you.
The mission was going better than anyone could have expected, in fact, almost without a single glitch. And for 3 whole orbits, Anders and his team gazed down on the surface of the moon and photographed the terrain beneath them. It was exactly what they'd been asked to do. But on the 4th orbit, as they came out from the dark side of the moon, the team saw something truly breathtaking.
I was shooting pictures out the side of the spacecraft when, I don't know who said it, maybe all of us at once, says, "My God, look at that." And up came the Earth. And that kind of caught me by surprise. We hadn't expected it. I had the long lens Hasselblad camera, no light meter, no instructions. And so, but as an engineer, I thought, well, you know, if I take enough pictures, maybe one of them will come out. So I use what I refer to as the machine gun approach. And I just clicked away and just kept turning. I don't know, took at least a dozen, maybe 50 pictures, one of which was selected by others to be Earthrise.
This is phenomenal.
Now this is the shot that Anders took. And speaking as an art historian, I kind of think that this image almost on its own made the Apollo missions worthwhile. And I also think that it's the one image, perhaps, of the 20th century that humans will keep coming back to again and again and again.
Even though we were hard-bitten test and fighter pilots, this thing, it was beautiful. We've been staring at this relatively ugly moon, and suddenly, out of the lunar horizon, came this beautiful blue. And I must say the hair kind of went up on the back of my neck a little bit at that time.
Earthrise showed our planet as a beautiful, colourful jewel suspended in the blackness of space. Published around the globe, it caught the imagination of everyone. It was the first time we had seen the Earth from another world, and it dawned on us that ours was, more than anything, a blue planet.
And you know, seeing this image really brings home a great irony to me, because for most of history, blue was this great colour of the beyond. It was the colour of the horizon. It was the colour of the thing that so many of us were aspiring to and hoping to escape to. But when in 1968 that dream finally came true, when in 1968 we finally went beyond the horizon, we discovered that blue was actually the colour of home.
Jimmy 4 using Cap Cobb. Hey, Gus, I don't know if you're ready, but we're right over
In the next episode, the most virtuous colour of all becomes tainted. From the grandeur of ancient marbles and Wedgwood's pristine porcelain, to the wiles of Whistler's women, Le Corbusier's sterile wall.
Okay. Swear hot. So cool, huh? Do you like that? Try to unmute.
That was fantastic, Joe.
Yeah, isn't it good? He's great.
Loved it.
And that I thought that, you know, in the beginning, it has spiritual metaphor. Blue is out there, like where God is out there. You know, he's up in the heavens in the blue sky. he's on the horizon. We're aspiring to him. And, you know, the mystery of blue is being something, as he was saying in the introduction. And then the truth is God is us. We are God. And that last photo. So to me, that had the whole story of blue has the spiritual metaphor, the spiritual past implications. So, yeah. So, okay, great.
Very good. Joe, would you mind putting that YouTube link or send it out? Because I'd like to watch it. I was
just BBC History of Three Colors. That's it.
Okay.
BBC History of Three Colors. Yeah, and the other two are good. That's the best, but the other two are really good.
Yeah, the last one was awesome.
Yeah. Okay, great. So
everything was awesome today.
Good. Next time, I think I'll do. Oh God. You know, in Chicago, do you know that Fresh Day, that sculpture that's reflective? It's like a big egg.
Yeah, the kidney.
The kidney. Do you know who did that?
It's called the cloud, you guys.
The cloud, but it's shaped like a kidney, dude.
Yeah. Do you know who? I want to cover that artist.
Oh, okay.
They call it the bean in Chicago.
The bean. Let me just look that up.
But, he's a God, I can't remember his name right now. Jeez.
The bean in Chicago vandalized? That's not good.
No. Who's the
oh, jeez.
What's his name?
7 arrested in vandalism of the bean in July.
No, sorry to hear. What's the artist's name?
Hello.
God, I was just watching him the other day. My memory for names is getting worse and worse and worse.
Hang on.
Artist of the bean, dear.
Yeah, I'm looking for the bean. Here it is.
Creator of the bean.
It is. What is the bean? Where's the bean?
Who made the bean?
Who does the bean mean? Who designed the bean? Okay. It was designed by internationally acclaimed artist Anish Kapoor.
That's it. Anish Kapoor. Yay. So I want to cover him. He's a real, go ahead. He's an Indian man who lives in London, and I love his work. And he's another one who gets at infinity, just like the blue. This whole theme, that one of the main themes in Western art is how to give the experience of infinity in art, and it's been done so many different ways over the periods. And even Yayoi, what's her name, with her infinity rooms, and here with blue, and etc. And I think he does it in a way that's totally original too. I had experience of his work at the Hirshhorn several years ago, and I'll tell you about it next time. But here's one person I'm going to cover. But you should know he's the creator of the bean. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
All right. I'll leave you to Jim.
All right. So Jim, should we just stay on this, or we need to go off so they can have? We probably
stop the